How to make soft bagels that are chewy and soft right in your kitchen.
So the night before you want to bake the bagels, you'll need to mix the dough. I like to use a stand mixer for this recipe, but you can definitely do it by hand if you prefer. This recipe is going to make 6 bagels, so in the bowl of a stand mixer, start with 375 grams of bread flour. As always, I'll also leave the volumetric measurements in the description below. Some people like to use a special high gluten flour for bagels or even add additional gluten to the dough, but I think bread flour works just fine and it's something that everyone should already have on hand. So next, just add 3 grams of quick rise yeast along with 12 grams of brown sugar. Malt extract is another ingredient that's typically used in bagel shops, but for the home baker, I'm recommending that you use this brown sugar instead. Just because, again, it's something that everyone should already have on hand and it achieves a similar effect to the malt extract. I'd recommend using dark brown sugar for its deeper flavor, but you can see that I'm using light brown sugar here just because that's what I had on hand, so either kind will work. Anyways, finally we're just going to add 210 grams of water and stir until all of the ingredients are fully incorporated. I like to use a dough whisk like this one because it helps the dough to come together super quickly, but you could just mix with a spoon or with your hands if you prefer. You'll notice that we haven't added any salt yet because before we do that, we're going to cover the dough and let it rest for about 30 minutes, which is a process known as the autolyse. Basically, the autolyse allows the flour to become fully hydrated so it starts to develop some gluten, and the starches in the flour start to break down into the simple sugars that the yeast can feed on. And just to demonstrate how important this step is, here you can see the dough before the autolyse, so if I try to pull on it, a piece just basically tears right off. Now here it is after that 30-minute autolyse, and you can see that the dough is stretching a lot more, indicating that we have some decent gluten development already. So after the autolyse, now we can add our 8 grams of salt. The salt tightens the gluten network in the dough and it prevents the water from being absorbed into the flour, so that's why we waited to add it until after the autolyse. So now just knead the dough using the dough hook attachment on your stand mixer for a solid 15 minutes or so, because we want a lot of gluten development to end up with a nice chewy bagel. You should see your dough become a nice smooth ball by the time you're done kneading. It should be pliable but not too tacky, so feel free to add a little bit more flour if it seems to be too sticky. Once you have that smooth ball, just remove the dough onto an unfloured surface. And I like to just give it a few more kneads by hand to smooth it out even more. Then divide the dough into 6 equal-sized pieces. I wanted to be exact here, so I weighed out my pieces, but obviously you don't have to do that. Now just form each piece into a ball by sort of rolling the edges underneath like so. This is a pretty lean dough and it's not extremely sticky, so that's why it's important to leave the surface unfloured. You need a little bit of sticking here to shape the dough properly. So once all of the dough balls are formed, just cover them with a damp dish towel and let them rest for 20 minutes to allow the gluten to relax. If you want to give them a very light dusting of flour to make sure the towel doesn't stick, you can do that too. Then after 20 minutes, it's time to shape our bagels. So take each ball and roll it into a log like so, then connect the 2 ends and roll over the seam with your hand to seal it together. The reason we're doing it this way rather than just poking a hole in the middle is because this way builds a little more structure and chewiness into the dough. So just repeat that process with the rest of the bagels, then place them all onto a parchment paper lined baking tray, which you've sprinkled with either cornmeal or semolina flour, or in my case, a mixture of both. Now it's time to throw these babies in the fridge to let them rise one final time before they're ready to bake. They'll need to stay in the fridge at least overnight, but you can leave them in for up to 3 days. Keeping them at a low temp is going to slow down the rise time, which will allow some nice flavor to develop as they rise. So just dust the tops with a small amount of your cornmeal or semolina flour, then cover the tray with plastic wrap and throw it in your fridge. Now we're back the next morning and our bagels are ready to bake. You can see they've got a great shape now and have risen pretty nicely. Now cooking the bagels is a 2-part process. So first we're going to quickly boil them, then we're going to bake them in the oven. So go ahead and get a large pot of water heating up over high heat and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 180 degrees Celsius. While those are heating, we're going to make some toppings for our bagels. I'm going to make 2 different toppings for these, starting with my favorite, everything seasoning. To make the everything seasoning, just combine 2 tablespoons of sesame seeds, 2 tablespoons of poppy seeds, 1.5 tablespoons of garlic flakes, 1.5 teaspoons of onion powder. You could use onion flakes here too if you can find them, and then 1.5 tablespoons of kosher salt. Make sure you're using kosher salt here, or at least some type of coarse salt. If you use table salt, it'll end up way too salty. I'm using Diamond Crystal brand, which is what I'd recommend because it can pretty much be found anywhere, and it's basically the standard kosher salt that most cooks use. Now the next topping we're going to make is a cinnamon sugar topping. So for this, just combine 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar with 1.5 teaspoons of cinnamon, and that's it. Finally, we'll need to prepare an egg wash to brush onto the bagels right before we bake them. So for this, just beat 1 egg together with about a teaspoon of water. So by the time that's all done, our water is boiling and the oven is preheated, so we're ready to cook the bagels. Before we can boil them, we're just going to add about a tablespoon of baking soda to our water, and I'm using about 3 quarts of water here. The baking soda is basically just going to alkalize the water slightly, which will help some gelatin to form on the outer surface of the bagel, ultimately leading to a shinier, more caramelized crust when it bakes. This step is optional though, so the bagels will still turn out fine if you boil them in the plain water. So anyways, start by gently dropping the bagels into the water one at a time and boiling them for 30 seconds to a minute on each side. The longer they boil, the chewier they'll end up, so I usually aim for about 45 seconds on each side. Right before they're done, just sprinkle your baking sheet with a bit more of your cornmeal or semolina flour, then place the bagels back onto the sheet. Then repeat that process in as many batches as necessary, making sure to avoid crowding the pot. After they're done, it's time to prepare the bagels for topping, so just brush each one with a light coating of the egg wash. Now, your topping choices are up to you, but I'm going to top 2 of my bagels with the everything seasoning, 2 of them with a bit of flaky salt, and 2 of them with just a tiny pinch of kosher salt. These last 2 are going to be the cinnamon sugar bagels, but that topping needs to be applied after they're done baking, so I just added a pinch of salt for now for some extra flavor. Now just toss them in the oven for about 25 minutes until they reach a deep golden brown color. The amount of browning you like is of course up to you, so you could bake them for as little as about 20 minutes, but I like mine pretty dark, so I went for the full 25 minutes. It's also a good idea to rotate the tray halfway through baking to ensure that every bagel gets cooked evenly. Right before they're done baking, you'll also want to melt a small amount of butter, which we'll use to apply the cinnamon sugar topping. When they're done, make sure to let them rest on a wire rack for at least 15 minutes because they're actually continuing to cook from the inside out as they cool. Now before they're completely cooled, you'll also want to apply your cinnamon sugar topping, so go ahead and brush some of your melted butter onto any of the bagels that you left plain, and sprinkle a good dusting of that cinnamon sugar mixture onto the bagels. But after that, just slice them and top with whatever you like, and enjoy. They're best served fresh after baking, but they can be reheated within the next few days in the oven or toaster.
Are you currently on a keto diet or considering to start one? Then stop for a second. I have a free download of the most popular keto recipes for you that will skyrocket your ketosis. Now, if you're not interested in keto, you can skip this video right now. This is for keto dieters only. I repeat, if you're not interested in keto, you may want to skip this video and watch something different. This is intended for keto dieters who love to indulge in tasty recipes. Hi, my name is Claudia Caldwell, and in the past few years, I've helped over 100,000 women shed their unwanted body weight, fit back into all their cute clothes, and reach their desired weight. And all of them had one thing in common: they followed the keto diet. And today, I would like to grant you free access to my easiest and fastest keto recipes that I've collected over the years. Now, I've compiled my best and tastiest recipes into a small collection that I would like to offer you for free download today, so that you can kickstart your keto diet and you don't have to waste time searching the internet for recipes. My recipe collection contains mouth-watering keto recipes, all with simple ingredients and easy instructions. And this recipe collection was made for ordinary people who suffer from complex recipes that include hours of preparing and cooking. I mean, those recipes make a good cooking show, but nobody can follow them in real life. My recipe collection is different. I wanted to compile a collection of my best and easiest keto recipes that everybody can follow. And this keto recipe collection is perfect for couples, families, and also seniors. No matter if you're living on a fixed budget or have little time to cook, you'll be surprised how fast and easy these recipes are. And you can download all the recipes for free today if you just click on the blue download button. And if you're watching this video on your smartphone, you can find the download button right below this video. Just click the blue button and you'll get forwarded to the download page and can start browsing through my recipes in just a few minutes from now. And if you're watching this on your computer, you'll find a small download button in the bottom left corner of this video. So just click on it and download your free keto recipe collection today.